All right, welcome back to another Corona Geek, here where we talk all about mobile app development using Corona SDK. I'm your host, Charles McKeever, and today we are going to go through code snippets from Dr. Burton's book. Dr. Burton's got a brand new book on Corona SDK that includes information about Graphics 2.0, Composer, and a whole bunch of other things. And so we're going to look at the inside of his book, go through some code snippets, and highlight some of the different things that you'll be able to learn if you download his book. So, Dr. Burton, thank you for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
And
always
everybody,
good to be here.
It is. It's always good to be here. It's a joy. I don't know. I look forward to Mondays. A lot of people don't like Mondays. Mondays is my favorite day of the week because I get to be here with you guys, all the Corona geeks in the community. It's awesome. It is awesome. Also joining us is Greg Pugh from GP Animations. Hey, Greg. Over there slaving away over his comic strip, his daily comic strip, right? Isn't it a daily comic strip?
Yep.
So if you haven't checked that out, be sure to go to mattybearbooks.com. You can find it there under his comics, comics.html. And also joining us is Kevin from Seaburn Games.
Yes, Seaburn Games. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So thanks for joining us. Not a fresh haircut, by the way.
No.
An inside joke. Also joining us is Sergey from Russia. Hey, Sergey. Yay! he's feverishly working away on something over there. I'm not sure exactly what. Also, Colette's joining us. Thanks, Colette, for joining us. You're here, and as a regular on the show, we appreciate you coming in and joining us. And also, Carlos. Hey, Carlos. What's going on? All right, guys, let's get into some of the things we've got going on here. I don't know if you're aware of it, but there's a lot of things happening out there on the community and on the interwebs, and we need to talk about some of it. So last week we talked about, on Corona Geek number 97, we talked about variable localization, or automatic variable, I don't remember. Sergey, what did you call it?
Wait a minute.
Automatic variable...
Automatic local variables.
Automatic local variables. There you go. It sounded cool when you said it. I couldn't remember, but we looked at the topic from the standpoint of being able to speed up your development and speed up your code and things like that. And so Sergey presented a solution, and also Ed Marina from roaminggamer.com presented his solution, and they're great. Both of them to go look at and learn from. So if you haven't watched Corona Geek number 97, definitely go check that out. We also talked about Corona Viewer and how you could use Textastic and Text Expander to develop apps directly on the device, since Corona Viewer allows you to synchronize with Dropbox and be able basically to, just like the simulator, to be able to see your app running on the device before you actually build it for publishing. So that's a great show. Go check that out, and check out all the other Corona Geeks that are there as well. All right, so we are coming up on show number 100. This is number 98. It's hard to believe that we've done many shows. I know, it's incredible. We're coming up on show 100, which on that show, well, actually the show after it, 101, we're going to do a special show where we're going to have Walter and David and some of the engineers and Rob and Brent from the forums. We're going to have those guys all on the panel and try to talk about some of the things that are going on with Corona. So starting this week, we will put out a form that you can fill out, ask questions, and we'll ask the panel to answer those questions on show 101. So be sure to look for that. And I'd like to give a shout out to Stinky Kitties, to Ray over at Stinky Kitties Studios. Ray did a 3D printing of a Corona Geek head, and actually I've got a whole collector set here of 3D printed heads, and he did that in honor of show 100, which is coming up. So thank you, Ray, for that. It's really cool to see this kind of stuff, being sent in along with things like the T-shirt, which Ray sent in a T-shirt, several T-shirts, and we were able to share that out with the community. So it's great when you guys send in things like that. I really appreciate it. It's really cool. Okay, so I'm kind of moving along here quickly because I want to get to the code for the book, but I don't want to leave out anything. So does anybody on the panel have anything that they want to talk about or share before we go too much further?
I can share my recent Corona pro tip. It's about finalize event. We were talking about it many shows ago, and Ed was catched a forum post about someone else having troubles with finalize event, and he shared my code for it, and thanks him for doing this. And I thought I would make a pro tip about this as well. It was on my list, and now it's done.
And you're posting those over at
SpiralCodeStudio.com.
Yeah, and so Sergey's got basically almost a daily, isn't it? Daily pro tip.
I decided not to do them on weekends because they don't have enough views. So
yep.
I do them on every work day, every usual day.
Yeah, so definitely go check that out. Be sure to follow Sergey online and
on Twitter.
I post them
on Twitter. Twitters.
On Twitter, and also, we retweet those over on Corona Geek. So be sure to watch for those if you're not following one of us. Be sure to follow at least one of us. Okay, so what was the pro tip for? What was the last pro tip?
Before that, it was a pro tip about changing FPS dynamically. So you can change between 30 and 60 FPS with the press of a button in your settings.
Yeah, there's lots of great stuff over there, so you guys definitely go check that out. We'll put a link to it in the show notes for sure. Also, we've got... oh, I'm sorry. Does anybody else have anything on the panel that they want to... No? Okay. Also, beware that Gremlin Interactive is still holding their plugin sale. So they've got Amazon Ads, Chartboost, Keep, and PayPal over there, half off of what they normally are. So essentially, you could buy all 4 plugins. I think if you bought all 4, you'd spend about $60, which is not bad for adding a lot of monetization functionality to your apps. So if you're interested in any of those, go check those out, gremlininteractive.com, and we'll also put a link in the show notes. All right, what else do we have here? I'm looking for, one thing that I want to note is that on the blog, coronalabs.com/blog, there is a new feature for excluding files from your builds based on the platform, specific platforms. So, for example, if you're building for iOS and you have assets in your project that are related to Android, you can exclude the Android assets from your iOS build. So that's a pretty cool feature. It was something that I think, Sergey, I think it was something you mentioned on one of the previous shows.
Yeah, we with Ed really wanted this feature for a long time, and we have been posting it. I was posting about it in IRC, on the blog, and I believe, and on the feedback page of Corona. And it just happened that one of the engineers in Corona was working on a similar, not feature, but in a similar files, and it was easy for him to implement it, and he just did it very fast. Thanks, Corona.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. It actually, it came up kind of out of the blue because we had talked about it on the show, and then next thing you know, it's like they announced that, hey, we put this thing in. I was like, wow, that's cool. Wow, just like they read your mind. Okay, well, we'll put a link in the show notes for that. There's a whole blog post on it, and it'll show you how to do that if you're interested in doing that, which I'm sure everybody will be. Also, in the show notes, we're going to put a link to, I don't know if you guys have been keeping up with the rumors for iWatch, but if you go over to Mac Rumors, iWatch Roundup, they've put together a projected timeline of events, rumored specs, patent breakdowns, and it's great. It's all in one place, and there's been a lot of a hubbub about Android Wear and what they're going through over there with Google, and I know a lot of people are looking forward to iWatch and what Apple may or may not put out in September. And so if you're looking for more information on that, and it beautifully put together, check out the link in the show notes to the Mac Rumors Roundup on iWatch. And we're also we're talking with AgeCheck. We've talked about them on the show before. They're CheQ.com. If you are doing any sort of children's apps, children's books, or anything where you need a age verification and that sort of thing, go check those guys out. They have a Corona, so they have support for Corona SDK, and I'll actually put a link to in the show notes to their blog post that talks about their support for that. But we're trying to get them on the show so that we can talk about some of these recent things that are going on. So I don't know if you guys have noticed, but the FTC is kind of going after Apple and has gone after Apple and is now suing Amazon and possibly may go after Google at some point, basically for the in-app purchases that children have made through the apps, and people, a lot of parents have complained over time and things like that. So we're going to get AgeCheck on the show at some point, maybe next week, maybe the week after, and we're going to talk about some of these issues and also talk about their support for Corona SDK and how they recommend implementing it in age verification. So look forward to that as well. All right, let's move on here. We've got some code that we need to go through. Basically, for the past, I don't know, 3 or 4 shows, we've said, hey, and we'll do these sample code things, and we've just run out of smack at a time. So I want to kind of cover a few of these real quick and then get into the code samples from Dr. Burton's book. So the first thing that I have here, and let me go ahead and share my screen, is basically that if you haven't been into Corona's sample code, it's a great place to find lots of snippets of information for your project. So let me just share my screen here. All right, and I'm assuming, can you guys see that? I've got my simulator up and some code. All right. So basically, there's 4 things that I want to demo here. One is let's see here. One is Widget Demo, which you can actually find. You can find all of these in your sample code. So if you were to go to Corona SDK, I'm on the Mac, so it's under Applications, Corona SDK, sample code, and then if you go into Interface, or actually let's just go to that right now. Let's go to Applications, sample code. There we go. And if you look here, there's a ton of different demos that you could go through, little snippets of sample code, and they're all, maybe 10 lines of code, or some of them are, 50 lines of code, and they're all categorized by different topics. So for the first one here, if we go into Interface and we go into Widget Demo, now Widget Demo, what it actually does is it brings up a demo of all the different widgets, which rightly so, right? It's the widget demo. But what it does is it brings it all into one app. So when I first started using Corona SDK, one of the things I wanted to use it for was business apps. I wanted to be able to create things that are not games and that were more pushing information around and things like that. And of course, doing that, one of the first things that you are curious about is like, well, how do I do a table view, or how do I do tabs, or how do I do some of the more common widget type things. Well, this demo brings everything together into under one house. So you've got your table view where you can select a specific item. You have your tabs. You also have, if you go onto each one of these tabs, so like the first tab is the table view, the second tab is a scroll view, so you can scroll a larger object. And this, I think this scroll view does. No, it does left and right as well. I was going to say, I thought it only did up and down, but it does left and right, so you can do a complete example of a scroll view. Picker wheel, so if you want to see how that works. And then on the last tab, the other tab, you have this whole breakdown of everything. So you got the segmented control list, you've got the steppers, radio buttons, checkboxes, toggle switches, sliders. I mean, it's all here. The status indicator, it's kind of hard to see on the screen here, but the status indicators appear in the right-hand corner. So if you're looking for an example of widgets, then I'd highly recommend Widget Demo in the sample code, because it'll bring everything together for you. So when you're looking at the project itself, under the main Lua, you of course have the main.lua is always the starting point of your projects. It's kind of the container for everything here. It starts off with the tab buttons and all that, but then you work into each one of these individual tabs. So on the first tab we had the table view, then we had the scroll view, so and so on and so forth. So you wind up having a clean example of each one of the widget implementations. So like on tab 4 here, you wind up with the segmented control, the new slider, new stepper, and so forth. So it breaks them down into these chunks that you can see how each one of them works. So the next example that I want to highlight is from Bullet, and which is actually found if you go into the physics.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes.
if you go into physics, and then there is a Bullet example here, and it's not a very big project. I think it's just main.lua and then just some of the supporting assets and stuff. And what it does, let me bring that up real quick. What it does is basically just shows you how to implement bullets in your project. So let me just right-click that, open in Simulator. And so this is probably hard to see. Well, here we're going to refresh it. So basically what it does is it takes a bunch of soda cans, stacks them all up, and then a bullet shoots through and blows them apart. So it kind of illustrates the physics engine in action, and collision detection and all this other stuff. So what I wanted to highlight out of this particular demo, though, is the stacking of the cans. So as you go through these sample code, you'll find that there's some recurring themes. So there's things that you might see that you're kind of like, hey, I've seen so far, these fast 3 demos, how they get rid of the status bar, or I've seen how they include the physics library and things like that. So the more you dig through the sample code, the more you become familiar with some of the recurring patterns and recurring pieces of code and how things work. So for this one, it was pretty interesting that you're actually taking one soda can image and then creating a table here, and then you're looping through and stacking all of those cans programmatically. So rather than trying to create it all, some sort of matrix or some sort of, hard-coded whatever, here's a nice little clean example of doing all of that programmatically. Along with that, what's that?
Loops are always your friends.
Loops are your friends.
I've seen so many codes that people just copy paste, lots of things when it could be done with simple for loop.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I think that it's easier to wrap your head around sometimes when you're just when you do copy paste. It's easier to see on the screen and that sort of thing. But from a maintenance standpoint and from a scalability standpoint, it's certainly not the best option. And so for me, when I come across a good example of how that's something that's being done like that, it's a piece of code that you want to copy and paste into your snippet library, especially that one, because it was, if we go back to that, we can see that not only is it replicating the cans themselves, but it's also adjusting the position of those cans along so that they appear to be stacked in columns and rows. So sometimes iterating through something with a loop is good, but here we're adjusting the positioning of things as well. So I thought that was pretty cool.
It is.
Along those same lines is here's one with here's a demo with chains. So let me go over here to chains. So here's a demo with chains. If we refresh the simulator, we'll see that all of these chains are created from individual links, just like with the can demo, except for this time now what we're doing is, instead of just replicating objects on the screen, we're actually doing joins. So we're creating physics joints between those individual links to create these chains that respond to physics properties. So I thought that was another one to highlight if you're looking for that kind of, like you said, loops are your friends. Check out that in the chains demo as well. And then lastly here, the simple pool example. So if we go back again, kind of going back to the physics folder here, go into pool. Then this is a pool hall pool game, and main.lua is right there. So let's just wow, and it makes noises, so it's probably going to be loud. But let's just play here. So the thing that I thought was interesting about this demo, the thing that I wanted to pull out in particular, was this right here, the directional and strength indicator. So if you pull back, you either get a very vigorous shot, or you can kind of get a less vigorous shot. And so I liked that it had not only is it showing you where it's going, but what the strength is going to be. And so if you look into the main.lua file, there's actually a function here, and it's commented here that says it's shoot the cue ball using a visible force vector. So everything that you would want to know about how to implement that into your own project is here in this simple pool example. So there you go. That's basically what I wanted to share, and I think that these sample code snippets are great opportunities to get in and explore Corona and be able to find out what Corona can do, and they're great places to find snippets of code that you want to kind of borrow and put into your own projects. But like we were talking about before the show, sometimes finding pieces of information are not as beneficial as finding, as say, like as having a comprehensive guide or something that can kind of walk you through. So having these full examples that take you through the concept and the implementation and all the code is very important. And so we've asked Dr. Burton to come on the show and highlight for us some of the code from his book and walk us through and help us understand what all is covered in the book and how it can help us with our development. So Dr.
Can I
Burton,
interrupt you a bit?
Yeah.
I just want to share that my favorite sample of Corona is jungle scene under sprites, because when I just started with Corona, I looked through all the samples, and this one was the one that impressed me most, and I was just working everything inside this sample. This is how I started.
Is that the one with the alien and the cheetah and the?
Yeah, with cheetah, with someone running.
Yeah, what I like about that example is there seems to be.
And parallax.
Yeah, it seems to be a 2D. There's a couple different characters there. There's like a 2D cheetah or some kind of cat that's running, and clearly it's looks like it's kind of hand drawn and animated, and then the other character out of that is some sort of space alien, and he looks like he was probably rendered from some 3D program or whatever, because he's got shading and all that kind of stuff, and then so he has a completely different look and feel to him. So it kind of illustrates the fact that you could have a 2D platform endless runner, but have a completely different look and feel to it. So that was interesting. So Brian, tell us the official title of the book.
Okay. The book that was just published is Learning Mobile Application and Game Development with Corona SDK.
Okay. Now, how is this book? I mean, you've published several on Corona. So how is this book different than, say, some of the other ones?
This book was created because after publishing the first book, which was Beginning Mobile Application Development with Corona, after publishing that, I had a whole lot of people say, hey, this is great, but it's obviously intended for people who already know how to program. I need something that is more basic. I need something that will teach me how to program so that I can make the great mobile application or the great game that I've got an idea for, but I don't know how to code. And so I started thinking about it. It's like, yeah, well, I did write Beginning Mobile Application and Development for computer science majors. It was for a class that I was teaching and I needed a textbook for. And those students had already had a full year of programming experience. So I didn't spend a lot of time going over what an if-then is or how to set up a loop or what a function is. I just simply, here's how you do it in Corona, and moved on to making stuff with Corona. In this book, I went ahead and spent the time going over the basics of how to set up your files, how to set up config.sys or config.lua and build settings, what all these different things mean, and defining each and every one of them as we were going through it. So the first 3-4 chapters are, this is what an if command is. This is the difference between an if, an else if, an else, all the different functionality that goes into learning to program. And it is more targeted at that, well, the beginning programmer. It's getting picked up by a lot of high schools, by a lot of freshman college programs as an introduction to mobile application, or programming, an introduction to programming even. So actually I had a school district and a university contact me today reviewing the book and planning on using it for this fall. So it's being widely adopted. It's very exciting to see it used. You know, I started both these books because my students needed them. It's very rewarding that other people consider them to be a valuable resource for teaching their students in their school district or at their college or university. So that's been a really neat experience for myself as a teacher.
That's very cool. Yeah. No, and we've talked about this before, and I just want to highlight it once again for anybody who's new to the conversation, and that is that you know, Dr. Burton he's taken on the you know, the love of this topic and created these resources, and one of the special things about that is that generally he's put out the book ahead of time, so you could buy the book, an advanced copy, and then as he's working on the book, he publishes updates, and you get the update for free. And then whenever there's an update to that book, like something gets added or he feels like it's important, an important piece is missing or needs to be updated or whatever, when he does that, he sends out a notice to everybody, and you can download that update. So it's like I wouldn't say a living document. It sounds so dramatic, but it's a very organic, you know, piece of media that I don't see any other publisher out there, you know, replicating. And so I definitely want to say kudos to you for that, and for anybody who's listening who is interested in a resource for learning Corona. I don't think you can go wrong here, because it's going to be a good resource, it's going to be authoritative, and it's going to be ongoing. So it's going to be, you know, it's not going to be something that, like I've got you can't see it, but I have a book, a stack of books here that my computer is sitting on, and they're, you know, that's SQL and C# and Red Hat Linux, and they're just these big paperweights, you know, and they won't get updated, and if something's wrong in them, well, I won't know that until I've banged my head against the keyboard, and so I really appreciate the fact that you keep that stuff up to date and make it available to everybody.
Well, and really my inspiration there was from publishing mobile applications. You know, we go through versions of software, and as we're putting out those different versions and we find a bug and we fix the bug and we publish that update, why aren't we doing that with e-publishing? It seems like a no-brainer to me, and as I've said, I am a professor. I'm a teacher first, and what I'm most interested in seeing people learn how to do these things and to do them correctly. I'm frustrated, just like you said, that I had like 5 versions of a book from another publisher in paperback for all the different iOS versions. As each one came out, I would get the newest version, and the author did a wonderful job, but I spent well over $150 for each for all those generations of mobile app development, and each one just had minor changes for those updates. That just doesn't make sense to me. Yeah, and I should note. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm going to say you make a great point. I mean, why not treat it as it's a piece of? I mean, books are books, right? I mean, a physical book is a book. We all understand the limitations of it, and it's printed, and it's you know, you can't retract anything once it's out there. But in the digital age, where you do have a piece of of digital media, why not treat it like software? I mean, it is software, right? And keep it up.
There's a great example of using books treating books as software. You can write books on GitHub with Markdown, and it becomes really easy for writers, for authors, and for readers to get updates and to interact with the code directly from the GitHub repo. And all the pieces they can come inside the book snippets.
Well, I'll tell you the one thing that's there, and I know probably there's some people who are thinking this already, is that, well, but if an update to a book doesn't cost somebody something, then how does the author make money? And I think that you've done a very good job, Brian, of putting out books that are relevant to the particular topic. So, like you said, you put out a version that was more programmer specific, and now you've got a version that's more beginner specific, or at least includes beginners in the conversation. And I think that personally, over time, that like if we did treat that as software, and you said, okay, you know what, this is version 2.0 of the book. I've updated all the 1.0 versions in the book, and that'll I'll continue to update those. But this is version 2.0 of the book, and now I'm asking that you purchase another copy, just like you buy an upgrade to a piece of software. I think that people would be more than willing to do that because you've already proven the value to them over time that they bought the book once, it's updated, it's up to date, it's relevant, and then when the next version comes out, why not? I'm all that more inclined to go ahead and just buy into something that I already trust and know.
And that may happen in the future. I haven't decided what the cutoff line is. The beginning mobile application the early access was published in August of 2011. It originally had 16 chapters in it because I was planning on using it in a normal semester class that had 16 weeks, and that worked. That's what my goal was. The book now has, I think, 19 chapters in it, and I've just published another update to it. The PDF's been updated. I still need to update the EPUB and Mobi versions, but eventually, yeah, I may have to put out a 2.0. It's at 1.7 right now in my numbering system.
Yeah.
So we're getting close.
We see this in a lot of different, especially in software, a lot of different venues where like even, let's say, just take for example, WordPress themes. You can buy a WordPress theme, and essentially what you're really doing is you're buying what they call an annual subscription, a year's worth of support, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be a recurring subscription, but if you want to be able to get the latest and greatest updates or the next version of templates that they have or something like that, then you have to have an active subscription, right? So you could, in effect, buy 1 year, get all the themes that you need, use them, and then the next year make the decision as to whether or not you want to, opt into that next round. So I could see books being something like that, where you're like, okay, I've got the information that I need, and if nothing new comes out, then I don't need to buy a new version. But hey, look, if a whole new set of information came out, then I would opt into that next purchase. But at least I would know that the book is being maintained and kept up to date, and if there's any typos or errors, that they were being fixed and that sort of thing. And, I think that would be worth paying for.
I may go to that model eventually. So right now, I'm putting out an update about 4 times a year on each of the books. The Learning Mobile Application and Game Development book now is available originally was PDF. I've now got the EPUB and Mobi versions available on my website. I've updated the PDF version of Beginning Mobile Application Development. I found out this morning that I thought I had updated the Mobile Application Development with Corona, which is more of a technical book than a textbook. But there's an error happening on my site. For some reason, the file's not downloading, so I got to fix that PDF. But I'll get that taken care of this afternoon. So yeah, it's been an interesting travel. I keep adding chapters rather than just simply going to the next version of the book, and I try to do what I would like to receive from publishers. Right. But of course, no publishers are doing that. But I figured I'd set an example. maybe we'll see a change.
I think that's awesome. So let's look at some of the code that's included in the book to kind of give people an idea of what they could get out of it if they were interested in that sort of thing.
Right, and as I mentioned before, the first chapters are about getting started. What is the design process that we go through as developers? It's intended for people that are brand new to this. This is their first time to do it. They don't understand maybe the cyclical nature of doing mobile app development that Corona supports so well. That's one of the things I love about Corona is that I can just start developing an app. I got a design idea. I start messing with it. That leads to more design ideas, and eventually I've got a finished app. But because it's such a rapid or agile environment to be able to develop applications in, I can do some really neat things. The example, I picked out 4 different examples to show today. Most of them are from latter chapters because I've shown some of the examples at other times on the show. But I thought I would start with, and I need to switch over to screen share here, so hopefully this will work okay.
I think you said you had a side scroller maybe, and then...
Yeah, I'm going to show that last.
Okay.
I'm holding on to that.
Okay.
I am using Sublime here for my examples. If you are using Sublime, I would encourage you to go ahead and shift to Sublime 3, because if you've ever clicked on an image before in Sublime Text 2, you get a hexadecimal listing of it. With Sublime 3, this is a reason to update to this beta. If nothing else, you get to see the graphic.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds simple, but it's very much a time saver.
It's just a huge time saver for being able to do it. Your code, if you purchase Sublime, which hopefully you did, I mean, this is a great product. You should go ahead and pay for it. If you've purchased it, you can go into it, and the code copies over. Just deauthorize the Sublime 2, install Sublime 3, and you can use the same authorization code. Worked perfectly. I've got it up and running on both my Mac and my PC in Sublime 3. Love it. I'm not getting any money from Sublime, though if they want to send me a check, I'll be more than happy to accept it. So this is from Chapter 4. Chapter 4 in the book, I'm introducing text boxes and text areas, how to be able to put that information in. Of course, I'm running this on a Mac, so I'm actually able to see the text boxes and interact with them. If you're on a PC, then you need to actually publish, which is my excuse to teach people how to publish to the actual device, which is also covered in Chapter 4. I chose a real simple example for my students. I wanted to teach them a few math concepts as well as using the text fields and publishing to the device. So this is just simply a calculate how long have you been alive, given your date of birth. So you got the approximation. We put in a few variables, set up our local variables to calculate the days in a year, the weeks in a year, days in a month, etc., so that to make all of our calculations real simple. And I do that for the specific reason is I want to show the use of using intelligent variable names. When back in the old days, we used X, Y, Z, A, B, C for variable names, and when we looked at our program again 3 months later, we had no idea what was going on. So fortunately, we're no longer in that era. We're all have learned to use, hopefully, intelligent variable names so that when we look at it, we know what the meaning of that is. And with that, we're able to calculate fairly quickly and easily what our value is. So we can go through, we do our calculations, figure out what today's date is, pulling it from the operating system's date, which returns today's date, the year, month, and day for being able to use in our calculations so that we can do simple subtractions. We go through, we show them how to do a display.new text to enter your name, locate that on the system, open up a new text field, place that on the system, and you can see it running right here off to the side. And please, if I say something that's not clear or anybody has questions, jump right in. I'm used to being interrupted in class, so it's not a problem. We go through how to set up the input type for your text field. So right here I'm using default for the person to be able to type stuff in. And we also set up in the background a keyboard listener so that we can dismiss the keyboard very easily. Of course, it won't show up in the simulator, but if we were on a device, that becomes very critical, being able to dismiss that keyboard. And then how to do a simple calculation for determining how long the person's been alive. So we can calculate all that out. I'm not going to step through all of that. If you want to see it, buy the book, Chapter 4. It's there. So I can put my information in. I'm going to put in just any old date. We'll party like it's 1999.
That's the other. I'm sorry. That's the other unspoken benefit to digital books and books like this, where you can A, search for code. Whole thing is searchable, and B, copy paste.
Yes. Yes. That makes life so much easier.
Yeah.
Though when I'm teaching, I encourage people to not copy and paste. There's something about typing that code in line by line that helps you to understand it better.
I think it's because you have to not say the code, but you have to say the code in your head, right? You're like, okay,
it slows you down.
We use display dot input, whatever, right? You have to say the things in your head and know how they all kind of connect together, as opposed to just copy paste.
Yes, it's a very valid learning argument that going through and typing the information in, it slows you down. You have to think about it. You have to say it in your mind. You actually learn the process. Whereas if you just do a cut and paste and submit it for your class assignment or whatever the case might be, the chance of actually understanding and having really learned what you're trying to do is much lower. So one of my big arguments for anybody that's learning how to program is do all the examples, work through all of the examples, work through all the assignments at the end of the chapter, even if they weren't assigned. Work through them if you want to learn how to do this, because it's a matter of practice to become a professional at it. I started programming back in the early 80s, and I can use that 30-plus years of experience to draw on continuously to help me get projects done. If you want to have that kind of experience, you need to be actually programming and doing those projects. So there's my soapbox as a teacher. Do the assignments. It pays off.
That's right. It's just in your best interest.
Yes. Okay, so I've got another example here that I thought I would show. The generators, the Graphics 2.0 generators are really some pretty cool stuff that you can do with it. And as I was going through it, the composite effects and the generators and all of that for Graphics 2.0, which is in Chapter 18 of the book, I thought, this is some really neat stuff. But until you actually see it in action, it's kind of hard to understand what is necessarily being accomplished by that specific generator. And so I chose marching ants, and I don't know how well this is coming through.
This looks good.
It's coming through good? Okay.
Yeah.
So marching ants is basically a moving dotted line around an object. That's what's generated. And basically it's looking at the stroke width and using that stroke to generate your marching ants effect. So, and this is the code. It's very simple. You do have to use display.setDraw mode and do a forced renderer so that it's updating every single frame per second. So as it's running, it's actually redrawing it every frame.
So really, you can turn that. You can just turn that on and off.
And you should. That uses a lot more processing and a lot more battery life on your mobile device. So if you're using the force renderer, and there's another one too, I don't remember what it is, but it also uses the force renderer. You've just attached the straw to the battery life, and you're sucking it out. So you need to only use the force renderer when you actually need to use it.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, we're accustomed to that when things are selected or highlighted or whatever. So,
well, but it's something that I like to emphasize, especially for somebody who's just getting started in mobile app development, that turning these things on and off, like the GPS. The GPS is another huge battery draw on the device. You only use it as frequently as you need to use it. You don't leave Force Renderer on or GPS on when you're in a different mode. You turn it off and turn it back on when you need it. And that has a huge impact on the battery life of the device.
Yeah, good point, definitely.
So just one of those little tips that you learn after you've developed enough mobile apps or just had enough people yell and scream about your app emptying their battery.
Well, it speaks to the concept of good user experience overall, right? So there's the look and feel of things or the intuitive nature of things, but there's also, if an app, I think we've all experienced that before at some point or other, if any app tends to take up either more physical storage space or battery life or whatever, then we really have to judge whether or not we're going to keep it on our device because it's it doesn't play well.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That we often run into, I can't play that game on the road because I won't have enough battery life to be able to do what I want to do.
Right.
And I need to be able to call mom when I get, or my wife, or my kids, or whenever I get to wherever I'm going to. I need to have enough battery life in my phone to be able to do that, or send a text message, or take photos.
Yeah, it's no good if the Google Map, if it drains your battery, which it's pretty battery intensive. If it drains your battery on the way to wherever you're going, and then you couldn't, you could maybe like only halfway through the trip, the phone dies. That wouldn't be any good.
That doesn't help you a bit. So as I was working through the one of the final chapters, chapter 18, and working with composites and effects and generators, and I don't mean this to sound derogatory or anything, but there aren't a lot of details about how these effects or composites or generators work. The information is there for you to dig into and do some really neat stuff with, but if you're not already familiar with it, it can be confusing. And since this is an introductory book, and I did add this Graphics 2.0 chapter to beginning mobile application and mobile application, so these are bonus chapters for the people who have previously purchased the books, and I thought advanced users need to see how to play with this stuff too. One of the things that we found when we were going through the composites and the effects and all of that is the descriptions are very terse.
They're a little thin.
Is that fair?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's absolutely fair. They're very thin in places, and I think you're right. If you are accustomed to other programs, you might be able to pick up right away, like marching ants. Okay, you're like, okay.
Yeah, marching ants is pretty easy. If you're very Photoshop familiar, a lot of the composites and the effects make complete sense. You can look at that. Oh, that's just doing the Photoshop effect of this.
Yeah. And the engineer who came up with these said, "Hey, it's marching ants. Everybody knows who's marching ants is." But there are some of these that you're like, I don't know what that does.
Exactly.
It's cool.
And I was going through them, and I would hit one or two or three and go, "What is that doing?" I'm not sure.
I'm sorry. And there are some variances between some of these filters that are very slight, right? This makes it black on white, and this one makes it white on black, and you're going like,
and this one includes grayscale, and this one doesn't. So
you're going
very minor, or not minor, but very subtle differences between these different composites and these different effects. So it's very critical that you get the right effect, and they are so cool. I mean, the things that you can do with all of these composite effects are so exciting and so neat. So one of the ones that I ran into that I hit it and it's like, what is that doing, was the composite.reflect. Now, I didn't include this particular sample of code in the book, but I did include an explanation in the book on what Reflect is doing based upon my experimentation with what's happening with it. And I did post this code to my website, so if you're interested in seeing it, it's on my blog. I did Reflect and Phoenix. Yeah, Phoenix was the other composite effect.
And that's at burtonsmediagroup.com? Yeah,
burtonsmediagroup.com. If you go to my tutorials, you'll see a tutorial on both the Reflect, composite.reflect, and composite.phoenix.
Okay.
And so what I did, this is the Reflect. And so I took the cover of my book, a little bit of shameless self-promotion there, and that was my original. That is the when you're working with composites, you're working with a bottom image and you're working with a texture or overlay image or top image, as it's often referred to. In this particular case, the cover of my book is serving as my bottom image, and then I wanted to apply a texture to it. So here's my texture. Just I wanted to see what happened when I applied the composite to it. So I've got black, a dark gray, light gray, and white gray. I figured that would be a nice, simple way that I could very quickly see what exactly this effect was doing. So we can run this, of course, then, and we can see what is it doing. Well, in the black area, it's completely shaded out. The gray area, you can see right here a little bit. There's something going on. It's darkened it a little bit. And then the white area, well, it's completely wiped out the images here on the side, and it wasn't very informative. So this was my initial experiment. I was not happy with my initial experiment. So I created a second image. And this is, I named it Texture 2, and we go red, green, blue, and then gray, so that I could get an idea of what was happening. And I'll change that in my file.
So mileage may vary based on your
based upon what your overlay texture is. So we relaunch it, and you can see that this time we can actually see what's happening. And what it's doing is it's like applying a filtered light to the object, to the initial thing. So in the red area, it's like I'm shining a red light for lighting the thing up, and it puts an intensified red to the image. Basically, it jacks the red up to maximum on anything that could include red.
So that's not reflect at all.
Well, it's reflective in like that the white or the colored areas are reflecting that. Anything that has red in it reflects that red. And here's my green area, and you can see there's a little bit of green here. Of course, white includes green, right?
Okay.
It would, if we were on that 0 to 255 scale, white is 255, 255, 255, right?
Okay. Yes.
So instead of what it does is it intensifies that color that has been applied to it. It jacks it up to 11.
Gotcha.
So
okay, it's an interesting effect.
Reference.
where would you think that this would be most applicable then?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily use a image like I chose to use for my application here, but if you wanted to, you've probably seen this in games already, where you go into an area that is looks sunburnt. And so they've applied a red to it, or maybe something that looks a little overcast, so they apply a blue to it, and it just simply intensifies that color.
So in your example, you use multiple colors and multiple angles and all that.
Just so that I could understand what the texture was or the composite was doing.
But in a more I don't know, practical application, it would be maybe tinting an entire scene or something like that.
Right. I might use a solid color all the way across, or a specific tint of a color.
Gotcha.
To apply to a scene, especially in a game environment. I don't know that I could use this. I can't think of an application unless I'm doing something with photos where I would want to necessarily use this in a straight application.
Yeah, that's interesting.
If I'm making a game, this is going to be great.
I remember when, Sergey, I think you submitted some stuff for the Graphics 2.0 competition early on, and there were a bunch of different filter type, photo filtering type applications, and that makes perfect sense that you would use that in that situation where you're trying to apply an overall filter to an image.
Right. And I should mention that I do cover how to use the camera, how to use it as the native tools for the camera, audio recording. That's all in the book as well. So you could easily take these composite effects and be able to draw from the chapter that's using the camera and apply that to images to apply all kinds of neat effects.
Very cool.
So there's good carryover there between the chapters. You may have to jump around a little bit, but it's all in there.
Now, I know we won't have time to go through the whole thing, but I see that you've got the side scroller there, and I just want to make sure that everybody knows that's included as well. It's a tease, right? So just you give us the
I'll go
overview
through
on
it really, really quick.
Yeah. The
side scroller is based upon the jungle scene that we talked about at the very beginning. Okay. But I wanted a side scroller game. I mean, jungle scene is really cool and great, and it does some really neat things. And I show how to do a splash screen. This is my splash screen. So
love it.
And I've got a little guy running. He can jump. I used to be a cross country runner, and so in true cross country you have to jump over logs and trash cans and back in the old days when we had serious cross country through the woods and over the hills and dales and through cornfields and all that kind of stuff. But I've got parallax scrolling going on here. You can see the distance. Each time he runs into a trash can, he gets knocked back a little bit, and if he gets knocked back all the way to the beginning, you lose. So the idea is to see how far you can go. Just a very simple, based upon the Green Man. I took Green Man and blued him, so applied some blue to him so that I could claim he was mine.
Does he ever? I know you said he goes backwards. Does he go forward at any point?
No, not at any point. I thought maybe I could add some power-ups.
Hey. Well, but that's for the reader to do, right?
That's for the reader to do. This is a basic introduction to how to do a side scroller game. I've got tap effects so that you can jump up. Parallax scrolling based upon how it was done with the jungle scene. And I'm just simply doing a very basic array or table, storing each of these items in there, and then each one gets a how quickly are you going to move. And in my scene, the background does actually move. The hills will slowly go by. I've got it set at a 0.01 ratio. The runner guy is at a 1 ratio. The background image is set at a 0.01. So
that makes complete sense. Yeah, the hills are way off in the distance.
They're way off in the distance, but they will slowly go by. Yeah. And if you're really good at the game, you will eventually run out of hills and into a blank screen there. So you might want to make it reoccurring or a really long image.
That's great. I like that you've got the distance ran, things like that. Heads-up display for that kind of stuff. What do you have a section in the book about doing levels or any of that kind of stuff, or do you have plans to add that?
That will probably come in an update.
Okay.
Because it wouldn't. Well, this is basically an endless runner, so
right. Doesn't apply here.
It doesn't really apply here. In Chapter 9 of the book, I go over how to do the space shooter game where we're shooting asteroids, and I really don't have levels built into that. The one that I've got levels built into is in the beginning mobile application development textbook. The Rotten Apples game has multiple levels, and it shows how to iterate through those levels. So it's something that I'll probably add at a later point to this book. So if you go ahead and buy it, eventually I'll throw something in there that shows how to have dynamic levels or how to go to the next level.
Okay.
Probably should set this up that if he actually gets to the end of the hills, it would go to a new scene.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
maybe a city scene or
levels don't make sense in all situations, but I think it's just one of those next logical questions that people ask.
Right. If I go to publish this as a real game, I'll definitely add that, and I'll end up adding it back to the book because it's about learning how to do it.
Right.
I'd like for my apps to make money, but I'm more interested in people learning how to make apps.
Gotcha. Yeah, you gotta focus your time someplace, right?
That's right.
Well, very good. Very cool. Thank you for sharing that with us. So if anyone out there is listening and they're interested, they'll need to go to burtonsmediagroup.com, and I think if you go to /books, it's listed there at the top.
Yes.
And
there's also a books tab, so you can just click on that and find the book.
And we'll also put a link in the show notes directly to the book. So if you, like I said before, if you haven't purchased one of Dr. Burton's books before, I don't think you can go wrong, because not only does he keep the books updated, but there's all these other support resources that go along with it, and it's just a great resource overall. All right. Well, I think that's a wrap for today. We're all out of time, but I want to remind everyone that before we go, they can find us on Facebook. They can follow us on Google+. They can also subscribe on YouTube. In fact, YouTube, I think, is by far the most popular way that people stay connected to Corona Geek, obviously, because we do a weekly hangout, and the videos are always there, and if you're subscribed, you get a notification from YouTube and that sort of thing. But don't forget that you can also get us on iTunes, and you can listen to us on Stitcher, which means you don't have to manage any podcast files or do anything other than just follow the show, and you can listen anytime you want. So we try to make sure that the show is out every Monday at the end of the day, so that you'll have that. You can download it, listen to it on your weekly commute or wherever you are. But we just appreciate you staying connected with us and supporting the show. So if you don't mind, go over and thumbs up or rate the show on iTunes or YouTube or wherever you like, and that helps as well. All right? So everybody, thanks for being here. Be sure to go to burtonsmediagroup.com, check out Dr. Burton's book, and also we'll put all the links to everything in the show notes. And until next week, have a great week, and happy coding.
Bye.
Bye.